For the past 7 years that you have led this ministry as a minister, how would you describe your legacy?
I don't know what English word to use, but in short, I will say that I have left a lot behind me. So many things happened in 7 years that demonstrated progress and innovation into the health sector. We saw several challenges, problems in here, and that we did so well as well. The building we are sitting in, right, is part of the things that I managed to get done for this ministry, and that is a huge achievement for Ghana. We got visibility, not only in country, but across the globe. Now, wherever WHO is organizing anything, Ghana should be there. WHO Africa, that the regional group of WHO, gave me a lot of recognition, and it's like that credit is for the health sector in my country. I had a lot of support from agencies that I came to meet with. In the process, I made one agency that was about dead and gone, resurrected, the Health Facilities Regulatory Agency. When I got here, virtually there wasn't much that place was doing. Now, HIFRA is something that anybody wants to write home about. In the process, we have actually established the Mortuaries and Funerals Agency, which is also a bit new, but they've started kicking as a young BP, and I know my predecessor will ensure that agency also grows quite a lot. Other agencies have done so well. We managed to reintroduce the health training allowances for our nurses and midwives who are in school. That has helped a lot of them to be able to pass through that professional training. And I think that is also a big achievement for the ministry, me heading it. We've done several policies, close to about 10 or so. And the first one that we did across the globe that nobody had done at the time was antimicrobial resistance policy. It was a document I inherited, but I went through. There were a lot of changes to meet the times that we are in, and we got it completed. Ghana even got an award for it outside within the WHO and the global health architecture landscape some time back. We've done several of these policies. I can mention a lot, revise a lot of them. The National Health Policy, the Food Safety Policy, several of them. And we are still kicking. So as for legacy, at the appropriate time it will come. For infrastructure, we've done so much on infrastructure. We now have close to about 35 facilities that have been completed. We are working in them that have not yet been commissioned. We were doing a documentary on all these things to showcase Ghanaians. I started asking that let us do a special exhibition of health infrastructure that we have fixed. These are all outside Agenda 111. That one too will be another legacy issue. It looks like we have left a lot behind. Even during COVID, we put up close to about 13 facilities for infectious diseases. They are all now completed, with the exception of just one or two. That is about 90-something% complete. That will soon also be completed. They are all ready for completion, for commissioning, but time hasn't been kind to the ministry and the presidency because I couldn't go commissioning these projects without the president or the vice president. And from last year, I've been writing to Jubilee House for them to create time for us to do the commissioning. We haven't been able to do. The much talked about Kumawu and Fomina, they are all completed now. I'm only waiting for these things to be commissioned. As for Fomina, they're already working in the facility. And the housing fence, secondary, have also been completed for our professionals to live in, to work for us in that area.
Well, that's a lot, but during your term, which ones are your highlights?
When I joined the ministry, people ask me, what are your priorities? I keep on telling them that I have multiplicity of priorities. I can't choose malaria over HIV, and I cannot choose HIV over TB. Despite that, there are several other things that we do in the ministry. You can pick service delivery as a priority against medical supplies as a priority, manufacturing and distribution and affordability and health insurance. These are all priorities. So for me to talk about highlights, it will be difficult. Maybe I'll talk about infrastructure. That is very tangible, that people can easily see. If you talk about policies, it's an intangible asset. People might not see it, but we work with these things as tools. So I wouldn't be able to give you what my highlights are. My highlights are the entire health sector and all the 28 also agencies that we've managed to run over the last 7 years.
For the past 7 years, what would you say was your lowest moment?
I think I had only one. When I had done no wrong. But some people wanted to just pitch me up and put wrongdoing on me. That was about when we procured the Sputnik vaccines. I was doing that one in good faith, collaborating, had meetings. I didn't do that transaction myself alone. Then all of a sudden, you didn't come to Parliament in an emergency. No matter how I tried to explain, the health committee in Parliament would not accept nothing. At one stage, I got so down that I was even requesting that they should charge me to court, because I thought that my explanations would have been accepted in court rather than in front of my own colleagues in the committee. Whether it was mischief or something, I wouldn't be able to tell. But that was what happened. Subsequently, even when that was dying down, another group in the chamber was trying to cite me for perjury, and they were asking for censor motion on me. These were times that I felt that I have done so well. I was working so hard to try to keep us alive, even in the midst of massive pandemic on the globe. Right? But despite all that, I managed to continue to do what I was doing to save lives in Ghana. And I think that was it. At the end of the day, nothing happened. I don't know what is going to happen. But I will still insist and continue to say that I did no wrong, and I never can be cited for any wrongdoing. So that is where it is. But it gave me pressure, because that was in my nature. When I haven't done something and you want to impugn me to have committed suicide, to have committed crime, that was very bad on my side. But God helped me to manage to continue to do the work. I never lost concentration. My focus was still there. And I think I brilliantly performed during the pandemic era.
The Auditor General, in his reports on the expenditure of COVID funds, cited a number of infractions by the Health Ministry, including paying of vaccines that never came, facilities that were never used, amongst others, and gave some recommendations. What have the ministry done in response to those recommendations?
I think we responded to those recommendations that Auditor General gave. And the sad aspect for this is that the auditors shouldn't have published work that has not been completed. We never got a management letter. We never saw any recommendations to respond to. Then they tried to publish. I think the Attorney General even issued some statement on that matter. That is not how audit work should be. Right? I sit as an accountant, and I was expecting that I would get a management letter to try to respond to the issues that they have raised. That's never happened. But then it was published. So we have responded to all these allegations and issues and all that. The vaccines that we procured had never been supplied. Yes, vaccines had never been supplied. But we've got massive quantities supplied. That was done by the African Union architecture, right? So Johnson & Johnson at one stage couldn't supply vaccines. But we had to commit ourselves to it, because when India closes borders and the vaccines we were expecting were not coming, we needed to do something. And that is how the African Vaccines Acquisition Trust got us into sign the contract for them to supply as a decision made by our president at the African Union, and Ghana couldn't opt out. There were several countries that were caught up in that sort of situation. Now we've had a lot of engagement with them, with other ministers in Africa that have that, from Egypt to Morocco to Ghana to Lomé to everywhere. And so that was a problem created, not by us, but by an arrangement that was being handled by the AVAT to ensure that we get vaccines on the continent. So that problem has been resolved. We've had inflows of these vaccines and refunds that they should have done. We are working on it together with the World Bank and UNICEF to make sure that we get all our quantities and get all our refunds done.
Would you say the demolition of the General Hospital without a dedicated resource of funding for each structure was a mistake?
I like the way you were stressing on dedicated fund, no dedicated fund. Why would we go and demolish LA when we haven't found source of funding? Let me tell you, the contractor that we signed a commercial agreement with to put up LA is the contractor that demolished the building. So you haven't got funding. You haven't hired the contractor. You were not ready to reconstruct. Why will anybody go and demolish it? But the place had become a death trap. I went there on 2 occasions. 2 different structural integrity tests have failed, and the only solution and recommendation was demolition. We found money before we moved in there. The money was coming from China as part of the, how do I call it, the bulk amount of money that government was borrowing from China to do that work. We had a Chinese contractor to go there. So after demolition, these IMF issues was what actually came up. And our government had to suspend some of these programs we have borrowed monies for. And that was the situation we found ourselves in. So the Chinese had to stop work. That was not the only project that was suspended. We were doing the Konfanochi maternity block. That was also stopped. Shama got stopped. Kolebu, we were doing the maternity block. That also got stopped. There are several other projects that we're working on. They all came to a halt. Even Eurojet projects at Salaga, the last hospital that they were doing, had to be stopped. It is now that the finance minister finished his domestic debt restructuring and engaging the external debt restructuring. That is when he's looking around to see how he can find money for them to work on. But the good news is that LA has started. In fact, that was the first one. The finance ministry found some new money for us. I answered questions in parliament on that. But what I want to raise is the fact that nobody will go and demolish without a good source of funding. We had approval from cabinet, from parliament to do LA on the basis of government borrowing money for us to do that project. And we handed the site over to the contractor we had agreed and signed these things for. Loans had been approved. They were waiting for, how do I call it, Sandoshore insurance, and that also delayed. And the bank that was doing the bulk syndication thing, which bank was that? Went down on that in Switzerland, Credit Suisse, right? So we had to have some arrangements to get certain things done. Sanchat was doing some small portion, right? But they were standing by until we got a partner to replace Credit Suisse. And all these things delayed us that much. But like I said, luckily, the finance minister has found some money and they've started working. We've had a lot of arrangements and reviewed the contracts with the contractor. So they are there now. The same contractor we gave that thing to. We never signed a new contract. We never went back to parliament. He's working now. But the question is that we got money before the place was demolished. When I got here, we had a semblance of an emergency response architecture situated within Ghana Health Service. They call it Emergency Operations Center. That was set up when Ebola was threatening West Africa. And Ghana, in terms of our emergency response to it, they set up that place. We had only 2 emergency centers, Tema and Rage Hospital, which is now the Greater Accra Regional Facility. Right? They were tent-like type of facilities, to have done work on Ebola if it had hit us. So these were the only facilities we have designated as emergency centers. Immediately we got COVID, the first instance. We had to expand the EOC, right? As a response that should situate itself within the Ministry of Health itself. So we took over that small place to try to expand it. We brought in different sectors that we thought would collaborate with us to fight the pandemic. First 2 efforts to bring ministers into the ministry, right, to discuss how we're going to respond to it, didn't yield any fruitful results. I had to report to the president after my meetings with him, and he agreed to set up a bigger task force for intersectoral collaboration, and he accepted to chair and lead us, guiding us to do the operations. A consultant that I have actually hired to help me do emergency response policy in our country, and seriously that will have led us to create a disease control center in our country, was actually taken over by the president, and he named him as the task force, the coordinator for COVID. So we expanded our outlook, and we had several meetings, made several decisions, we implemented several decisions to try to ensure that Ghanaians wouldn't have a big bust on the COVID issue. After fighting within it, we have set up what we call a very robust emergency system now in the country. Like I told you, we had close to about 13 emergency infectious disease centers set up, 2 in Kolebu, 1 in Dodua. Every region had got one. The Adeklu one was reported on even by the Auditor General. Now go to Adeklu and look at the place. We've just handed over to the Trafalgar, the teaching hospital in the Volta region, the whole teaching hospital, to manage that place for us. So we are now seriously set. We are working on a policy that will take us into what we now call as health security policy. And that is our emergency policy that we have now. When it is approved, we are getting close to getting it to cabinet. We will then set ourselves and be assured that we have a strategy and an architecture or landscape that will do emergency response. But one thing I haven't mentioned, and I wanted to put it on record, after all the COVID pandemic fighting and battle on evaluation, 2 countries that got COVID battle right was Ghana and South Korea. Now we topped the whole world in our battle against COVID.
However, we have Chairman of the Health Committee of Parliament saying that it is impracticable and is not done anywhere in the world. Are you afraid you're also ones that making NHIS cover dialysis will collapse the scheme? Should we put the cost of dialysis on?
He is the chairman of the health committee, and this is his opinion. Whether he has any scientific documentation behind this assertion or not, I will not be privy to it. But my thinking is the fact that anytime we want to add on a disease burden to health insurance challenges, right, we visit what we call our actuary reports. And so far as we are working, and actuaries are working on this, any moment that the actuary report indicates that we can put some aspect of it on the health insurance, we will so do. So we want scientific evidence, data, to enable us to make that decision. That is not ready yet. But on, how do I call it? My thinking is the fact that going forward, it is very likely we will have to, as a nation, push some part of dialysis on health insurance. But the disease is not getting into only rich people. There are very poor guys who are getting this disease. And should the country sit aloof and let them die unnecessarily? So this is what we are working on. It is part of a non-communicable disease strategy, and we'll see how best some of these things can be taken care of, either by health insurance or by government, as happened in the last time when the brouhaha came. The finance minister to give them 4 million to support them, to try to make sure that they continue to provide service. That thing is still on. We continue to support them until we get a permanent solution to the challenge of dialysis. The best option for us is prevention. For prevention of how this thing comes out, we need causative factors. We need people to talk about it. And now that we've got our own platform to do health promotion and health education, I believe that we may, through social behavioral change strategy, try to talk to people, and probably the disease attacking us will begin to go down by virtue of how we live, by virtue of how we engage ourselves, so that we don't get encounter with this sort of challenge.
Lastly, what would you say to that reshuffle?
I also thought that I was going to end the year as a minister. But in politics, right, we have something we say as a minister: the day you sleep on the wrong side of the president, you are gone. So it didn't come to me as a shock at all. After 7 years, I had always anticipated that come reshuffle, I may want to go. The president called me, and I thanked him for having given me the opportunity to have worked with him for continuous 7 years. I sit here, and as part of the legacy I'm leaving behind here, look at all the pictures here. Ministers. During President Mohammed's time and President Mills' time, in 8 years, this ministry had 7 different ministers. I don't think that was good enough. Anytime I attended WHO meetings, I now sit on the Gavi board. Anytime I went for Gavi meetings, they were making comments about how our health system wasn't strengthened, got a little bit dislocated within the global health architecture because of the frequent changes of ministers. But for me to have been here for 7 good years, I think this ministry has built some resilience and tried to position ourselves into how things change in the ministry. All the policies that I said we have done, if they were changing ministers every 2 years, every 6 months, every 1 year, that wouldn't have happened. But I think we managed to be successful over the 7 years. The innovative things that we have done, I didn't even mention them. A lot of them are happening presently. Flying medicines, the largest installation in the world. These are these things. We are deploying digitalization issues across the health facilities in country. We have now linked our teaching hospitals, our regional hospitals, our district hospitals. We are now going to the sub-districts. And if you go into any facility, you don't need to hold any folder. Right? If they refer you, that is it. The bed syndrome thing is coming down because we are using the ambulance service that we have situated. I didn't even mention about how we have strengthened the ambulance service and the number of people we have recruited there. We are working with the ambulance service. Before they pick you on your way, they will have to find out where there is a bed to take you there. Right, and that will be a situation where you get there will be no bed will be out, because we don't all have to go to one particular facility. So there are several facilities linked to ambulance people. Right, they pick you, they call, wherever there is a free bed, you will get there. We are all doing this thing through the Vice President's digitalization agenda, and I believe that with time we'll complete all this infrastructure and things will be very easy, very, very, very easy for us.
Are you still going to be politics people of your constituency?
Did you see what happened in my constituency last Sunday when I got there?
You tell me.
I told you I've seen this thing on Facebook or somewhere else. A tumultuous welcome of the minister. What I've done in that constituency as an MP can never be taken away from me. They have voted for me, right, the 5th time. I've won my primaries, and I know come December 2024, I'm still going to win my elections to go and sit in Parliament again for the people of Doma Central. That cannot be taken away. And if it's left with only one vote, that will be for me. And that's what politics, you win by one simple majority. It's a vote, and you win and go away. But that is not what I'm going to do. My vote, margin is even going to increase this time round. So I'm still going to stay in Parliament for another 4 years. And only God knows what will happen after that. Whether I will do again or I will stay aside. My time will tell. Honorable Kuboy has worked there before. He knows my directors and even the ministry itself. So he will have a smooth sail. It won't take him long to learn before he starts working. He will come straight away and kickstart him. I have had an encounter with him. I called him. He called back. I'm expecting him to finish his vetting and swearing in. And I'm ready to hand him over immediately. He gets to the ministry to start work. What I don't want to do is to leave the place vacant. I don't want a lacuna. I will behave like a gentleman and wait for him to take over smoothly for me.
Thank you very much, Honorable Agyeman-Manu, for making time for this interview. I'm most grateful.
Thank you very much, madam. I'm also very grateful.